a geek. Talking baseball every week. 'Cause they're Gleeman and the Geek.
And welcome to Gleeman the Geek, presented by Black Stack Brewing, now in a liquor store near you, you lucky. I'm John Bodos of Twins Daily. With me, Eric Gleeman of The Athletic.
I like you looked down at the paper as you were saying your name as if you had forgotten your name. That's a new twist on an old theme. Yes, we are going to talk.
Who is not lucky?
Well, I got a lot of answers
Twins
to that.
bats.
Twins, yeah. Twins go to Cleveland after a good homestand against inferior competition, obviously, which we talked a lot about.
Outscore Cleveland on this for the series.
Yeah. Well, they get the game one win in Cleveland after going 5-1 against the White Sox and Angels, including sweeping the Angels. Then you go to Cleveland and you win the first game. What was it, 11-1? And you combine that with some slightly better offensive production versus the Angels. I'm thinking specifically like against Kikuchi.
Sure.
I think that was the second game, the Saturday game.
Sunday, but yeah.
Okay. And no, it wasn't Sunday because I didn't go to Sundays.
Oh, you're right. It was. You're right.
I feel like your shooting percentage on correcting things is like 20% at this point.
Perhaps.
It's part of the charm of the show, I suppose. He says, hopefully. So then they go to Cleveland. They score 11 runs in the first game, and you start to think, okay, maybe this is finally clicking to some extent. The approach, maybe they're finally cashing in some runners when they have bases loaded or they have second and third, one out, that sort of thing. And then no, they don't. And the next three games are, I would say, representative of what the last 4 or 5 seasons have been.
More so
in
than
these matchups.
More so than they were the first 3 weeks of the season.
Well, I'm saying, yeah,
because
I'm saying versus Cleveland.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Where it's just, I have the numbers here I can spout them off and really depress people. But
Cleveland announcer was spouting them off, by the way, after the last
Tom Hamilton.
He's great.
Who, by the way, is super nice. I've talked to him a couple times.
And so good.
Yeah, he's like a legendary old school announcer. But whenever he's in town for playing the Twins, always super nice, always chatty. Which is how I evaluate people.
Sure, yes.
Really. I don't think I've ever listened to him announce a game because I don't listen to radio, but I know he's legendary.
Oh, he's great. Well, he's great.
I just go by how they act in the elevator going to and up and down from the press box to the clubhouse. That's really all I judge people on. So 3 tough losses after that. They're now, what are they, 13-19, I want to say? So you've reached the 20% mark of the season, essentially. It ain't pretty. And they just cannot get any footing, really. They've stopped a few slides, and the most recent one being the homestand, where we knew basically if you don't take care of business here against 2 very bad teams, White Sox and now Angels are just in a free fall completely.
Right, yeah.
The White Sox have been in free fall for 3 years, but
sure.
And they did take care of business. I'm not going to sit
5 out of 6 is great,
right?
Yeah.
But one of the things that we sort of, cautioned coming off of that when we were on the Patreon side, was it doesn't mean anything. You need to do it. You need to win 5 out of 6, or we said at least 4 out of 6 from those 2 teams, or you're really in trouble at that point. But there's not that much to be learned, when you play a AAA team, basically. And so the true test was going to be...
What you've shown is that you're not a 60-win team or a 55-win team. You're at least a 70-win team by knocking off, 2 patsies like that.
Let's hope they've shown that.
Right. Yes.
They haven't really shown that, I wouldn't say. Since the beginning of last season, they're 16-3 against the White Sox. And I have this. I don't want to get this wrong. It's a bad record, but let me be precise about it. The Twins are 16-3 against the White Sox since the beginning of last year. 79-96 against everyone else. And obviously, every team is padding their record against, like you said, the patsies of the league.
Right.
But they've been much better against the White Sox than even most teams. And we're at the point now where you've played like almost 200 games against other teams and you've been solidly below 500. I'm really just sort of getting to the point where it's like, and I'm sure many people listening to this have already gotten to that point, or we're at that point at the end of last season. this just isn't a good team. And, we can talk about all the component parts and this looks good and that looks good, and we will.
Right.
But
because there are some component parts that look good, right?
But the reality is they don't do the little things. They're not doing the big things.
No.
And in particular, their inability to cash in not just scoring opportunities, but these opportunities where their good teams break games open in these spots, and the Twins get zero. Bases loaded, one out in back-to-back innings, or second and third no outs, and they get nothing. It just goes strikeout, pop up, ground out, and you just go.
It's not even really clutch hitting. It's just like advanced runners, which is the sort of thing that they espouse they want to be able to do.
They espouse a lot of stuff,
right?
On the field, in the front office, from an ownership level that they don't actually do.
And you can't offset it. I mean, in the past, when you weren't doing those things, or moving runners, or scoring runs, or hitting with runners in scoring position, which we get, it's not a skill. There's a luck component involved to some of that stuff. You at least could fall back on the power, but they've given up the power,
right, for contact. But the contact is such weak contact that it's not productive.
And exactly. And even when it just like you need to put a ball in play and get a runner in from third base with one out, it's still not happening.
Right.
A lot of that.
It is be careful what you wish for, because 2 years ago they set the all-time strikeout record, but they actually had they had an excellent offense in the second half. It carried them to the playoffs, basically. I think they were second to Houston in all offensive categories, essentially. But everyone was so worked up about the strikeouts, and God, can't have as many strikeouts. So over the last 2 years, they've gradually gotten to the point where they're now striking out less often than an average team.
Right.
In the span of 2 years, they've gone from the most strikeout-prone team ever to just sort of a run-of-the-mill team in terms of strikeout rate. And the offense, how's it looking? It's looking like a team that just puts the ball in play for the hell of it.
What I find most interesting about the pivot in that direction is, do you remember one of the talking points at the end of the 2023 season, like when we went in after they had lost in the playoffs, after they'd lost to Houston? I'm almost sure it was a statistic they cited, I think off the record, but maybe on the record, saying, take a look at the play. Because the question was, can you do well in the playoffs if all you do is sort of hit home runs? Like that was sort of the perception. If you strike out and hit home runs, or if you're striking out that much. And the statistic they say is that take a look at what the
we always talk about this.
We exactly we talked about it. But they brought to us too. They said take a look at the record in the playoffs of the teams that struck out more than the other team.
Right.
That they hit more home runs,
they had a winning record.
Struck out more. Right. And it was a very
because strikeouts come with power and often with walks. They're often attached, and no one wants to see that. But bigger picture, it's they're not. Their overall runners in scoring position numbers are actually decent, but one of the weird parts of this season was, and it's only 6 weeks old. Only 5.5 months to go. Ooh, boy. That gave shivers down my whole body when I said that. They were hitting, the first 3 weeks, let's say. Overall, they were hitting like 180.
Right.
I mean, it was pathetic.
Right, yes.
But with runners in scoring position, they were hitting like 290 because they were having like these 5-run innings once every 5 games that would kind of prop up their overall numbers. Well, that's disappeared completely. Now their overall numbers have trended a little bit towards semi-respectability. They're hitting, 220 instead of 180. But their runners in scoring position numbers have absolutely plummeted, which goes to your point that it's not a skill. It's not a predictive thing. It just sort of happens randomly, and then in a big enough sample, it sort of regresses towards your overall offensive performance, which is to say not good. But that's been the biggest thing. And, they've, whether you look at like games scoring 2 runs or fewer or games scoring 3 runs or fewer, they're, top 5, or I guess I would say bottom 5 in baseball with like White Sox, Marlins, Rockies, those sorts of things. And, if you look at their overall offensive numbers, they're just normal bad.
Right.
But that's because they've had a few, like the 11-run outburst against Cleveland, some 6-run innings like that. But the inability to put together like 3 or 4 runs, which isn't a lot, but to put together some baseline competency offensively on a consistent basis is just absent. And, I can read you some of these numbers. Like over the first turn and a half or 2 turns through the starting rotation to begin the season were not pretty. Chris Paddock got clobbered. Bailey Ober got clobbered, etc. They weren't good. Over their last 22 games now, they've played 32. So ignoring the first 2 turns in the rotation, which is 10 games. In the last 22 games, the pitching staff, which is all pitchers, starters and relievers, has a 2.88 ERA over like 4.5 turns through the rotation. Almost a month. 2.88 ERA. That's amazing, right?
Yep.
Their record during that time is 10-12, the team.
Right.
Because they score 11 runs, and then they get shut out, and they score 1 run, and they score 2 runs. And the other thing that happens with that is, and we saw it in Cleveland where they get walked off twice.
Right.
Louis Varland gets walked off by Cal Manzardo, and that was a terrible pitch.
Yes.
And Justin Topa gives up a couple runs. But the Varland one is such a perfect example of how kind of criticism and blame gets warped by the lack of hitting.
Right.
That game, they held the Cleveland Guardians to 2 runs for the entire game on the road, including 1 run through 8 innings. No matter what happens in the 9th, 10th, 11th, whatever, if Louis Varland could literally put a changeup on a tee for Kyle Manzardo and give up a walk-off home run. Yeah. The pitching staff did its job. Yeah. And instead, it's like, Varland gave up the walk-off and all that. I'm not saying it was a good pitch. I wrote about it was a bad pitch. But the offense, the like trickle-down effect of a horrible, inconsistent offense that gets chances and cannot convert them even a little bit to play 1 run here or there. They get the bases loaded and it's just nothing.
Right.
The trickle down is 1, it just leads to losses. 2, everybody starts looking at the hitters like, what's going on here? Especially if you have new hitting coaches and all that stuff. But then 3, it just wastes so much good pitching.
Right. Yep.
And it also shifts blame to guys who don't really deserve it. And I think that's just, I don't know, it's a very frustrating way. There's no good way to beat 13-19, obviously. But this is a particularly frustrating way because I would say for the most part, the pitching staff, now that Lopez is back, is healthy. The pitching staff, both the rotation and the bullpen, I'm not saying that they've been flawless by any means, believe me.
Sure.
But they've mostly been, as advertised, as pretty good.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
And the offense just has not carried their end of the bargain like even a little bit.
Well, and they met a team, watching that series, they met a team that seems very similar to them in all of those regards. That Cleveland is a team that's got some really good starting pitching. They've got a bullpen that absolutely has carried them when they've needed it.
Right.
The question is always, like, can they come up with enough offense? Now, you take a look through the top of that lineup, there's certainly more guys that you would take a look at and go, well, I mean, between Santana and Ramirez and Kwan, like, they've got some guys who are going to be consistent run producers.
Yeah, meanwhile,
we don't really
in the 4-game series, Cleveland scored 1 run, 2 run, 4 run,
right.
and 4 runs. And the 4 runs, the second 4 runs came in a 10-inning game.
Yes, right.
So they only scored 2 through regulation.
I got it. Yeah, and that's because of the Twins pitching.
Right.
Right.
They're not hitting either.
Right.
But yeah, it's a very frustrating way to be, and I'm sure the pitchers are frustrated. I mean, they're not going to say anything, obviously, but I mean, there's been a few hints about that. But some stats on Cleveland, just to get these out of my system, since I looked them up.
Go ahead.
The 2 walk-off losses during this series are the 9th and 10th walk-off losses against Cleveland in the last 4+ years, 4 seasons plus the beginning of this season. That's the 10th. They have 10 walk-off losses in Cleveland during that time.
The Cleveland Tom, what's his name again? I'm sorry.
Hamilton
said it was 12, so he said it was even worse. No, I could be wrong on that, or he could be wrong on that. Or
they're 0-12 in 1-run games.
Oh, okay. Okay. He said they've been walked off 12 times in 1-run games, but he must have meant just the 1-run games part. Okay. Yeah. Anyway. It's gotten to the point now where the Cleveland announcer, as it's happening, is like, and here we get a chance to do this yet again in the bottom of the 9th and the bottom of the 10th. Another walk-off win versus Minnesota coming up soon.
Yeah, and I mean, again, the pitching was fantastic yesterday. Simeon Woods Richardson did not have a particularly efficient start, but the first 3 relievers out of the bullpen threw scoreless innings. Jax looked great. Duran got out of trouble and threw a scoreless inning. Yep. And look, they were winning 3-2 in the bottom of the 10th because they had scored their courtesy runner.
Right.
And Topa gave up 2 runs, and that's terrible. But you got to the 10th inning having allowed 2 runs. Right. You should win that game if you have any sort of offensive contributions. And they're now in their last 50 games against the Guardians, not just in Cleveland, just overall,
Sure.
50 games. That's a lot.
Yeah.
The Twins are 16-34, which is a 110 loss pace. And it feels like that. I mean, obviously it feels like that in Cleveland because they're getting walked off like twice a series. But even at Target Field, I mean, they haven't had a winning season record against Cleveland in 5 years. And some of these have just
Even
been...
in 2023, they didn't have a winning record.
No, I think it was 6
Closer,
and 7
but
or something like that. Yeah. And I'm not going to sit here and say Cleveland isn't a good team. They are a good team. I mean, they've been the best team in the AL Central for the past X number of years. But they're not a dominant team, and they're not a team that's even crushing the Twins. It's not like these are 8-2 losses.
Well,
But it's the same, as you said, the same script over and over, which is close game, close game, close game. Which reliever is going to give it up here?
Right.
And I mean, they had so many chances to just plate 1 or 2 runs yesterday.
Yes, they did.
And I mean, they out-hit them. I don't even know what it was.
They had 13 hits.
Yeah. I mean,
13 hits. So they hit over 300 for the game.
Right.
And scored 2 runs in the 3
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to say about this. I think, in particular, the fact that the pitching staff has rounded into good form, and the lineup, which is without question what we had the most concerns about coming out of last season because of the way that they contributed to the collapse. I mean, during the collapse of August and September last year, everything was bad. The defense was bad, the hitting was bad, the pitching was bad. So, managing was bad, everything was bad. But the hitting during that 6-week collapse last year was bad in such a way that we started to question, is our perception or our sort of big picture view of certain hitters.
Right.
Royce Lewis, Miranda, Julian, guys like that.
I still have said questions.
Yes. Well, and that's what I'm getting to is like those questions. I would say they haven't been answered, but I worry that they have been answered. You know what I mean? In a negative way, which is, a lot of these guys were not, these are not building block guys, unfortunately. And we'll see Royce Lewis. He's been out, hasn't played since then. It sounds like he's going to be back hopefully Tuesday. They have Monday off, but hopefully Tuesday for the beginning of the homestand. And that would theoretically provide a big boost for them. I mean, they at this point, they need a couple things. One, they need Carlos Correa to perform like a $30 million player. And he hasn't. I mean, he just hasn't. And we're at the point now where every time he has 2 hits in a game, it's like, oh, here we go. He's getting rolling. He's not getting rolling at all. I mean, you look. I think.
What's his OPS now? Is it 600 even?
Well, but here's the problem. To the extent that he had bad luck early in the season, and I do think he did. He was hitting some balls hard, not enough, but he was hitting balls hard, and they were getting caught, and he was hitting, 150 batting average, and his expected batting average was 270 or something like that. That's not even true anymore. I mean, his expected numbers have plummeted because he's just not hitting the ball hard anymore. And his plate discipline has deteriorated. Early in the season, we thought, well, he's still controlling at bats, which makes this lack of production weird. He stopped walking. He started swinging at worse pitches. We've seen in some key spots where he just swings through pitches or has just kind of empty at bats, and that's just unlike him. And the overall production is bad. But the thing that worries me, and I've been pretty consistent with this all season, he has not looked right visually to me the entire season. And I'm not claiming to be some great hitting mind or anything, but we're at the point now where the sort of secondary metrics or the expected numbers are basically as abysmal as the regular numbers because he's no longer even like putting together good at bats and he's no longer hitting the ball hard. And I don't know what you do with that. And I think the wrist could be to blame for this. I don't know. He hasn't really.
He's got no power.
Right. And it's not even power. It's just the entire approach at the plate looks to be a completely different hitter than the guy we've seen for the last decade with Carlos Correa. Yeah. He's just sort of fighting pitches off the other way, and it's very strange to see. And he's had some productive games here over the last couple of weeks because he's putting the ball in play and all that stuff, but he just does not look the same. And the reality is, when you have $130 million payroll, and you're paying a fourth of it, a big name shortstop, a quarter of that money, and he's been your worst hitter, your lineup's going to be pretty bad. But the other thing that they need to really do, beyond hoping that Correa just starts to play like Carlos Correa, they just need big league caliber hitters filling all the lineup spots.
Right,
And they just haven't had that because of the injuries. They have four
because of the offseason and the injuries.
Yes. I mean, they didn't address all the questions that we had coming off last offseason. They didn't change the core. They tried to just roll it back. Well, you've rolled it back into the same mess that you had ending last season. But, when you have 13 position players on a roster and one of them's Christian Vasquez, the backup catcher, who looks pretty cooked, although he had an RBI single yesterday. Yeah. But, I mean, he's hitting 150. Nice. Sure. And then you have Jonah Bride and Mickey Gasperin, Deshaun Kersey, and Cody Clemens, and
as we talked about on the Patreon the other day, one of them has to be in the lineup at this point. Right.
To be clear, these guys can be productive players. They can be useful role players. But as the 13th guy out of 13. Right. But you can't have 5 guys who are the 13th guy because then you just don't have a lineup. You have like the 6 through 9 spots in the lineup are just, they're not even like good AAA lineup. Like it's just sort of, it'd be like, oh, that's the Saints lineup, I guess. Now, hopefully they're getting Royce Lewis back for this homestand. Hopefully soon after that, they're getting Willie Castro back, although it doesn't sound like he's fully healed yet, despite missing that whole thing where they didn't put him on the IL and then they did put him on the IL. That would help a lot. I mean, Royce Lewis, first of all, can be inserted into a RBI spot, and then Willie Castro's ability to play everywhere makes it so that you can basically have one more big league caliber hitter. Although it's not like Willie Castro was doing all that well, and for that matter, last we saw Royce Lewis, he was hitting 160. So
we saw Royce Lewis play Tuesday and Wednesday back-to-back games, right?
Yeah, not at third base.
But not at third base.
They've been rained out also at St. Paul 8 times so far or something, so he's not really getting the cleanest rehab environment, I guess I would say. But given that they have Monday off, and the Saints also have Monday off, so he can't do anything, really, I would expect him back Tuesday. Okay. I think that's the plan. It puts him in a weird spot, which we've seen before, where he's like looked at as some savior. And that's not fair to him. I mean, but what they really need is just productive major league players in the lineup. And that is sad to be saying in the first week of May. But that's the reality.
I mean, I would like to see them rush him back for Boston. I would like to see them rush him back for Boston.
They're not going to do that. But to what end? Why do we think he's going to be great? Well, when last we saw him, he was the worst hitter on the team.
Yeah, still taking him over Jonah Bride at DH.
Well, right. But then he gets hurt again, and then you're back to Jonah Bride at DH. Yeah. I mean, neither one is a good scenario, but they're not rushing him back. I mean, he's not. I don't think he's in Boston. So, I think that was it. All I had on the ugly Cleveland numbers. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, these games technically get lost by pitchers. I get that. That's how it works. When the lasting memory is somebody hitting a bad changeup 800 feet off Louis Varland, it's like Louis Varland lost that game, and yeah, that was a bad pitch. These games are being lost by hitters. All season. I mean,
we know the lineup is the problem.
Yeah, but I don't know how you fix it because you can get healthier, I guess, but I mean, Wallner's not going to be back probably till June, and I don't know that Willie Castro is going to be some savior. And yeah, maybe Royce Lewis can hit like he had in the first 100 games of his career, and that would carry some things, but what if he doesn't? Because of how they approach the offseason, they stuck with the core they have, and the core they have is not doing it. Yeah. And there isn't really like a second wave. Yep. And honestly, the 2 guys they picked up this offseason.
Right, yeah.
Bargain bin, $1 million for Ty France, which is basically a minimum salary, and $6.2 million or something for Harrison Bader.
Those guys have worked out great.
Both of those have been very good. I mean, Harrison Bader has probably been their best player through 30 games or whatever. I mean, he's been pretty good offensively and phenomenal defensively, and he's essentially played every day now at this point.
Yes, yep.
He's been excellent. I mean, he's already provided $6 million of value, and France has been doing what you thought he would do, which is spraying the ball around, being an RBI guy.
Now he's starting to hit with some actual power on top of it. Right.
And yet, you brought in 2 guys for a combined, I don't know, 7 point something million. Yep. They've both been very good. And it still hasn't helped, really, because the core itself, the guys you've chosen to build around and to stick with, they're just not doing it. And some of them are hurt. I mean, I think the Wallner injury really hurt them because he was productive in general, but also A, was leading off, which helped, and B, just providing power. Like a scare. This is what we were talking about with the strikeout rate going down and the power going down with it. They just don't have any fearsome guy like that pitchers are even going to be afraid of at this point.
The 2 young guys that have actually developed are both out hurt. Like we've been waiting for this young talent, this young hitting pipeline to kind of come through and establish themselves as the core of the next team. And really only two have consistently done that. Maybe I guess you can include Jefferson in that as well, because for the catcher position, he's certainly at that spot, right? But in terms of the middle of the order bats that you were planning on leaning into for the next half of a decade, they're both out right now.
Who's the second one?
Lewis.
Well, okay. Yeah.
I mean, certainly he's got that that to him. Right?
I think he's got a lot to prove at this point.
No, I agree with you. But
I think, but I agree with that. I mean, and then for that matter, Keishel, who showed a glimpse of it.
I was about to say, did Keishel get hurt in the Braves game? Did he get hurt since the last podcast? He did, right? It was
he got hurt at home.
Oh, it was at home. It was the last.
Yeah.
It was the last of the, okay.
It was against the Angels.
Okay, all right.
Kyle Hendricks hit him.
Yeah, that was right at the Friday game, though. That was also happened after the last time we did the free podcast.
Well, John, you said the Braves game.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was thinking, yes.
Buddy, you got to give me something to work with here. If you want to hear us talk about a better team and a more fun team, we, on the Patreon side, Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman, in addition to doing like 2 Patreon exclusive commercial free episodes about the Twins every week, we decided, well, what the hell? Let's talk a little Timberwolves too. So we did a like mini episode after the Game 4 win,
right? And
the reaction to it was so positive, and we had fun doing it, that we just did a full hour and 20-minute episode after the Game 5 series-ending win over the Lakers, where we talked a lot about it, and the reaction to that's pretty good too. So
yeah, we're committed on the Patreon side to recording stuff about the Twins on twice a week, Monday, Wednesday, etc. Even when they had a week like this, we managed to do that, talk Twins, and I thought they were both really good discussions. But the nice thing about us switching from $1 per episode to $8 per month for the whole month is that
it's all in one.
We don't feel like we can put other stuff out there and not be charging $1 for it. We can just kind of experiment.
Take
with
free sample. Take a free whatever. So
we're going to actually include a little clip from that. One of those discussions.
Little basketball talk. We'll put it at the end of this episode.
At the very end. We'll give you your full.
So if you don't want basketball talk,
you'll get your fill of the Twins talk.
They've probably already gotten their fill of the Twins talk. I think on that point, since we switched to $8 a month instead of $1 an episode in April, which just ended, I believe we either did 11 or 12 episodes. Yeah, so now we're undercharging people, which is how great businessmen we are. We went from charging $1 an episode to charging like 60 cents an episode, but that's sign up for Patreon.
Fortunately, we like to talk, so
that is true.
Do you know what I like to talk about?
Beer.
Exactly right. Yeah, and in fact, I ended up talking about beer with another one of my favorite beer drinking Twins beat writers the other day, because he had stopped by Black Stack Brewing and he was like, I don't know why you're not here. And I said, yeah, I don't know why I'm not there either. Because that is a great place to go and have a lot of tasty beers. But you can now also get them at your liquor store. I would highly recommend you try out the local 755 New England IPA. This is Black Stack Brewing I'm talking about, by the way. I keep saying beer, but I haven't actually said who they are. Black Stack Brewing. Try out the local 755 New England IPA. I think the Slopes French Pilsner is the best local lager on the market right now. They also have Pull Tabs Pale Ale or Uncut Jams or the Strawberry Rhubarb Sour. You can get those plus a lot more at their tap room. But the key here is you can get a lot of those right now in your liquor store. They now have a brand new distributor, and you can find them all over the state of Minnesota, from Grand Marais to Rochester, Winona to Fargo. So just stop by there and ask for Black Stack, or look for the kind of silverish cans that they have in there. And like I said, they're going to come highly recommended because they're known for their beer. So stop by Black Stack Brewing near 94 and 280. That's their tap room, or even easier, just ask for them at your local liquor store.
Our second sponsor is BetterHelp. And the way BetterHelp works is, if you've been thinking about, I like to talk to somebody about whatever issue you have in your life. A lot of times, most days you probably wake up and you're like, I don't want to talk to anybody about this. When there is a day where you wake up and
you don't even want to talk to yourself about it.
But if there's a day where you wake up and you go, actually today I would like to talk to somebody. There's so many barriers for entry or speed bumps to make that happen, to see a therapist in person and all that, from an insurance standpoint, from a scheduling standpoint, from just finding one standpoint. BetterHelp tries to take all that and make it simple. You can get matched up with a real licensed therapist, typically within like 72 hours. And then from there, they can kind of tailor it to what you're comfortable with. If you want to do a video chat, do it. If you don't want to be on camera, you do a phone call.
It's also a lot more affordable than traditional therapy is here. And if it doesn't work right away, you can always switch therapists. It's really easy to switch therapists once if you're not vibing with them. So you can get a lot of your help taken care of, get those obstacles taken care of with. We can all be better with BetterHelp. So visit BetterHelp.com/Gleeman, and you're going to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Gleeman.
Okay. You take a big breath, John. Take a big, deep breath.
I think I'm distracted by the packing and stuff today. So I don't know what's going on with me.
Yeah, I think you're distracted because you haven't had 10 minutes of free time in the last 15 years. That's my theory.
Is that what you think?
Yeah. Okay. Let's Royce Lewis, likely back Tuesday. Willie Castro, theoretically back on the homestand, but the updates on that have not been they've been interesting, considering they held him out for 8 days because they thought he would be ready to play without an IL stint, and now he's not even going to be ready maybe to return when the second, basically the delayed IL stint is up. But we already talked about that and how silly that whole process was, or how frustrating that whole process was. Keishel likely out minimally 2 months with the broken right forearm, which we mentioned a minute ago from the Kyle Hendricks pitch. So that puts him
end of June.
Yeah, I mean July basically, which it's unfortunate. And then Wallner, who's been out 3 weeks, I want to say roughly, with the hamstring injury. It's a grade 3 hamstring, which is again going to be 2 months basically. So he's not going to be
similar to the Royce Lewis.
Yeah. So I don't know that the cavalry's coming here necessarily offensively, other than Royce Lewis. I will say it's starting to get weird that Carson McCusker is at AAA.
I was just going to say the other cavalry item is potentially, if you're wondering about Erod, Emmanuel Rodriguez down in AAA, he's also been dealing with a thumb injury still, right?
He played yesterday.
Oh, did he finally pack it? Okay, great.
Carson McCusker, who's also in that lineup at AAA, is not really a prospect because he's 26, 27. He was signed out at Indie Ball. I think certainly that plays a part in the Twins' skepticism. I mean, they're the ones who signed him, so they believe in him more than the other 29 teams. But he's a guy who's moved quickly, but not super quickly through the system, even though he's been pretty old for most levels. But since he's gotten to AAA at the end of last year, hit pretty well there last year, and then has just been destroying AAA pitching through a month this year. He's hitting 330. He's got 8 homers, I think. He's got like a 1,200 OPS. And you look at him, and you can't help but be intrigued because he's 6'8" and 280 pounds or whatever. Like, he really does resemble Aaron Judge. And even he gets opposite field power the same way, where it's like, oh, he mishit that. He was late on that ball, and then it goes over the fence in right center.
Lots of leverage in those long arms.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch even the clips of it. But he's just a big, hulking, right-handed slugger. And I get the level of skepticism. I mean, he was signed out to Indie Ball. He's always been too old for the level of competition in the low minors. He does have a high strikeout rate. He's not the greatest defender, but he can play left field or right field. But I mean, I'm at the point we just talked about, kind of going through the last 5 spots on their 13-man rosters. Like, I mean, and in fairness, I mean, Jonah Bryde's been a great AAA hitter. Mickey Gasper's been a great AAA hitter. But from a skill set standpoint, a lot of those guys, the Bride, Gasper, Clemens, they all do the same thing, basically, which is they're like contact hitters. They can play the infield, but not that well. One's a lefty, one's a righty, one's a switch hitter, all that. At least McCusker, and I almost feel like he's right-handed and Wallner's left-handed, so it's not a apples to apples. But to me, they just need power. And they have so many stylistically similar guys now, especially on the bench, where it's like, do you really need, what is Cody Clemens bringing that Gasper doesn't bring? And, Bride maybe has some upside. He's been a good AAA hitter too, but you got one of your own guys who's now in his third year in the organization putting up a 1,200 OPS with huge power, and he's stylistically, from a skill set standpoint, something they've lacked for a decade, which is a power-hitting right-handed corner outfield.
Exactly that which we were saying throughout the offseason and last trade deadline and the offseason before that and the trade deadline before that they were looking to acquire. Right?
So, I don't know. It's getting weirder by the day. And I'm not normally, in normal circumstances, I'm not one of these guys who is like, oh, there's a guy at AAA who's had a good 3 weeks. You got to call him up.
Right.
But his track record's pretty good. The power is going to play. I mean, he's not going to hit 330. He has a high strikeout rate. But even if he hits 230, he's got 25 homer power. He can just at least be a presence in the lineup that they got to be careful to pitch to, and maybe he can knock around some lefties and stick around even once guys get healthy in a platoon type of role longer term. So yeah, it is weird. I mean, I get people are looking at some of these lineups that are getting out there, trotted out there in games, and they're going like, "What is this? Like, what is this? The Saints lineup?" And I get it.
Right.
And the Twins will tell you, well, it's because of injuries, which is true.
Sure,
Lewis and Wallner and Castro and all that, but. And they'll also tell you, we think guys like Gasper and Kersey and Bride and maybe not Cody Clemens. I feel like Cody Clemens is more just a placeholder. But some of these guys, if given an extended opportunity, can actually be productive players. And I believe that too. But you have one of your own guys just crushing the International League for the Saints. Why not give him a shot? And they'll, the 40-man roster. You got so much... Flotsam and Jepson or whatever that is on the 40-man roster at that point. That's not really a concern. So I would personally just like to see it. I think it would be interesting to watch a 6'8", very poor man's Aaron Judge in the middle of the lineup or batting sixth or something like that. I mean,
for that matter, you've got basically the DH spot open. That to me is the most egregious of it. Like, I understand injuries being such that you have to plug in a Jonah Bride on a regular basis, or some sort of combination
because it's
of
hard
4A guys on a regular basis.
Because it's hard to have depth at every position, like in terms of being able to actually cover the defensive aspect of it.
And these guys are somewhat flexible defensively. That's why they've maintained major league / 4A careers, is because they can provide just enough offense to just enough positional flexibility to sort of fill in when you need somebody for a spot like that.
Which is why they're all individually fine as the 12th or 13th guy. The problem is when you have 4 or 5 of them. But to your point, the DH spot, the only qualification is can you hit?
Yeah, we don't need positional flexibility right now. Right. They've got all the spaces in the infield and the outfield covered, and with pretty good defensive spots most of those places. Right? Between Bader and I guess Larnach you could argue could be a DH, but you don't really have a outstanding defensive outfielder to throw in there anyway, right? Buxton and Correa and Brooks Lee. I mean, you've got the positional spaces covered. You just need a bat.
Yeah.
And of those 4 bench players that we're talking about, the one thing you can't say about any of them is like, well, they've got a bat. I mean, maybe Gasper, you could argue that at a 4A level, but that's it. That none of them are going to be like, oh, well, he's on this roster for his bat. Right. Yeah. So while, I'm unconvinced on because he's essentially like a lot of these guys. He's a 4A or a AAA guy that with less pedigree, who's having a quick stuff.
Although he hasn't been stuck at AAA for 4 years.
Well, that's true.
Which is one difference.
That's true.
He's played, I think, even still, like less than half a season at AAA because he played some last year and then the first month this year. But
I'm not sure that's a good thing, but yes.
Well, what I'm saying is he's basically in his first go-around at AAA and he's destroying it.
Okay, all right.
Whereas, the fact that, let's say, I don't know, Jonah Bride is like played there 3 years or something. I'm skeptical of him too. I ranked him first. Well, last year he had been good, but he hadn't been at this level, certainly. He had been good at AA and AAA, but not like amazing. He had like a 800 OPS or something. I think he ranked, I want to say 36th or 38th on my top 40 prospects, but that's just me basically highlighting a guy I think could be good because he's not even really a prospect. He's 26 or 27 years old.
Out of the Indie League, right.
Right. And so
I wonder if they would have been more open to bringing him up by now if they didn't think we've got Lewis coming here back around any minute,
Wow.
They're going to be sending down one of those guys anyway to
You got room for both, let me tell you. I mean, one thing they can't say is we don't have room for good hitters. I mean, yeah, Lewis is going to need some time at DH, but also you can play McCusker in left field or right field, especially against a lefty. I mean, they're starting Kersey in the outfield now. I mean, this is just it almost resembles. Was it 2022 when they had like 1,000 injuries, and in the second half they were trotting out like Nick Gordon, Jake Cave, and Rob Refsnyder.
Yeah,
and it's like I get it. They were just besieged by injuries that year. It's April. I mean, like we just finished April. Like, and look, they've had injuries, but they haven't had that many injuries. I mean, they're down 2.5 regulars basically, and that's a lot. Like that, you don't want that. But let's be real. They've been down Royce Lewis for the most part of the last 4 years. Like what? I mean. From a planning standpoint,
right? No, I get it. Yep.
And I mean, you can fit both of them. I will say, like, I mean, part of me wonders if they didn't have Carson McCusker, and he was just DFA'd by another team.
would they jump on him? Right?
Send cash considerations to that team for Carson McCusker, like they did with Jonah Bride, like they did with Cody. Is there some level of like, well, yeah, our guy, I don't know, but this guy's available on the waiver wire. Yeah. We can pick him up. I don't know why you treat like. I'm not. I mean, I haven't talked to Cody Clemens. I'm not trying to like make an enemy here, but why? Like what? Just call up the guy who has a 1,200 OP. And I know they're not from the same skill set, but to your point a minute ago, they don't need another like below average second baseman, first baseman, third baseman. They need guys who can hit. Right. And there's very little evidence that Cody Clemens. I mean, he's 31 and he's played 100-something games in the majors. Like, so I don't know. I would like to see McCusker get a chance, and it's possible that he's not good, that he's not a major leaguer. It's possible they're right, to be skeptical. Yeah.
And he's not going to have a lot of time, like all the rest of these guys. He's not going to have a lot of time to show it, probably.
Right. But also, it's possible that 40% of their position players right now are not really major leaguers. So, okay, the one guy offensively who I think has kind of stepped up, or I don't want to say stepped up, but like shown some promising signs over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I would say, is Brooks Lee.
Yep.
And the overall numbers are still, they're okay. They're not amazing, but I think we're starting to see.
He is treading water, is what I would say.
Yeah, which, he's got a couple of homers already, which he only had, I think, 2 or 3 in like 50 games last year for the Twins. He's still making a ton of contact. I think he's only struck out like 4 times or something. He has more walks than strikeouts. The weird thing with him is I think it's almost the opposite of the Sano problem, which is people always used to look at Miguel Sano's strikeout rate being so high, and they assumed he swung at everything, like that he was an undisciplined hitter. The reality was the opposite was true. He was a very disciplined hitter, and he was constantly 2-2 and 3-2, where one swing and a miss equals a strikeout, but he drew a lot of walks. He didn't chase pitches. He just swung and missed a lot. Now you go to Brooks Lee, and he has such a low strikeout rate that I think, and he just looks calm at the plate, and he's got this high IQ reputation, and people go, oh, well, he's just a bat to ball, great plate discipline, like gives you great at bats. But what we saw last year, at least, and this is a little bit of his reputation in the minors, he swings a lot of bad pitches. He can just put them in play because he has really good hand-eye coordination, and he's a more of a slap hitter. I would say that he's done a much better job, and I haven't looked at the numbers to make sure, but I'm just from what I'm watching, laying off kind of low changeups and otherwise borderline pitches to keep at bats going, not make these easy outs, just sort of chopping balls to second base, and put yourself in position where you're getting more hitters counts. And I'm not saying he's driving the ball over the field or anything, but he's giving away fewer swings. Like he's giving into the pitcher less. Yeah. And it would make sense that a second-year player would do that more than he did as a rookie. But that's the key for him because the contact ability is there. We see in spurts, first of all, he can turn on a pitch and occasionally pop a homer, which we've seen a couple times. And I've been impressed by these sort of Luis Arraez style, just slap the ball over the third baseman's head in a spot like that. And that's something he can bring to the table. But you can't be that type of hitter and go chasing low changeups all the time. And so I think there's been a little progress on that front. And we talked about this when they activated him a couple weeks ago. They just need his defense.
Right.
And so the fact that he's showing some positive signs offensively, hitting near the bottom of the lineup, has been great.
Well, and the fact that Royce Lewis might be coming back in a few days and he's sitting over there at third base. Right. Don't expect Brooks Lee to be sent down when Royce Lewis.
I would hope not.
Right.
I would expect him, and he's been playing some second base now lately with like Bride playing third, let's say. I think that's what you'll see, and you're also going to see Lewis at DH a lot. Probably, right. In which case you can put Lee back at third. You can theoretically play Julian or Castro.
Yeah. I could guess. My guess is that we're going to see a lot of Julian / Lewis at DH when Lewis comes back.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
With Lee picking up the open slot.
Before we talk about some other news and notes here, let's talk about our last couple sponsors. One of them is Raycon.
We've got a couple of different holidays coming up: Mother's Day, Father's Day. If you want to be a hero, I would suggest you at least take a look at Raycon earbuds.
I have purchased a set of these for my mother before.
I know you have.
Raycon, the nice thing is the quality is every bit as good, and I think some of the features they offer, and you like just the actual like physical fit in your ear, are better than some big brand, more expensive.
Yeah. Dads will love the engineering in it.
Well, okay. But earbuds. And so, I like that it consistently can pair Bluetooth, even if you're switching between devices, going from phone to laptop to whatever. Right. I like that. I like the battery life on them is really good. And
it charges fast, too.
Yep. Yeah. And the price point is just much more appealing.
Dads also like that.
Yes. And so do sons who are buying for dads for a present.
That's right.
There's nothing I like more than a thing I like that someone can tell me they got free or discounted or just a good price on. Right. And you can get a good price on Raycon by going to buyraycon.com/Gleeman. You get 15% off site-wide right now. Raycon is offering up to 15% site-wide when you go to buyraycon.com/Gleeman. That's BUYRAYCON, buyraycon.com/Gleeman. Our last sponsor.
Yes, we've got, let's see, Twins are coming back to town on Tuesday. We've also got, Wolves game potentially Monday, potentially Tuesday, or later on in that week. Wild season's over. Sorry, gang. If you want to check out some of these games, you want to be part of the playoff atmosphere, I tell you, I went to the Wolves game 4. It was fantastic. I mean, it's great.
Game Time, the Game Time app specializes in hard-to-find tickets, which playoff games fit that.
That's right.
And also last-minute tickets, which is Twins.
Well, the Twins are all about it. Yeah, that's right.
So if you're just downtown somewhere having dinner, you're on a bar stool, and you go, let's go to the Twins game. Yeah. You can open up the Game Time app and essentially get the tickets as you're walking to the game, and then just show at the gate and get right in.
Right, and it kind of highlights sort of the best deals that are available for you, so you can instantly, while you are, 10 minutes before game time, find out what is out there right now. Like, am I going to be opportunistic and jump in? So
take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. You download the Game Time app, create an account, and then use the code Gleeman, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account on the Game Time app and redeem the code GLEEMAN for $20 off your first purchase. All right. I don't know. Pitching wise, like we said, I hesitate. Good. I mean, there's really nothing to criticize. There's a pitch here. There's a pitch there, obviously. I mean, if the bullpen was flawless, they'd have 1 or 2 more wins, but that's not fair to expect the bullpen to be flawless. I think, it's of note that the pitching staff is essentially healthy other than Michael Tonkin, especially relative to the lineup, which we just spent an hour talking about.
We've seen Jax move down in the innings, I guess, from 8 to 7. I mean, a couple times, a few times. Varland's been given a few high leverage pieces, which I think we kind of expect him to go. I'm a little surprised it's moved as fast as it has, but I think that's a good thing.
Well, I think it's more to do with Sands than it is Jax.
Well, I think that's probably true. You're right. Yeah.
Sands just hasn't looked as sharp as he did. I mean, he's not been horrible or anything, but he just hasn't looked like the guy we saw emerge as a late inning weapon in the second half of last season, especially. And then Stewart is kind of being eased back in, gave up the homer to Naylor. Yeah. I think they were already trailing that game, but it was a 3-run homer, 2-run homer, to kind of break that game open. The other, pretty much everyone's healthy. that they, were hoping to bring into the season at least, except for Tonkin, who was going to be the low man on the hierarchy anyway in the bullpen. You've gotten a good look at Festa for 3 starts, and he confirmed, I think, what he showed last year, which is that he's just a major league pitcher sitting at AAA right now. You still have Zebby Matthews also doing well at AAA right now. Then the question becomes, we've focused so much on Paddock. The reality, though, and look, I'm on record many, many times in writing and on the show saying I would have pushed very hard to trade Paddock to at least get rid of that salary so that you could, reinvest it in something else, a bench bat or something, which could have come in handy. And his first start was horrendous against the White Sox. He gave up 9 runs. That's going to leave him with bad numbers for a very long time, no matter how he pitches, really. Right. But the truth is, since that horrible first outing, and there was one other, I think the second outing was like,
a little iffy, right?
He's basically given you 5 innings, 1 or 2, sometimes 3 runs. I mean, he's got a 3-something ERA, I think, since that bad first outing. I don't think he's been particularly impressive. Like, the strikeouts are way down. The walks are too much. The, strikeout to walk ratio is pretty bad. But he's wriggled out of some jams.
Top half of the rotation guy. He's the bottom half of the rotation guy. But a competent bottom half of the rotation.
Yeah, it's tricky because you have 2 guys at AAA that I think you can count on being a big part of your future rotation. And I think certainly Festa, in my mind, is just a better pitcher than Paddock right now. And maybe Zebby is too. But once you make the decision not to trade Paddock and not use those $7.5 million on something else, you're not going to give up on him 5 weeks into the season when he's basically had 1 terrible start and 5 decent starts. And it's a weird spot to be in where it's like, we got higher upside guys at AAA that are going to be a part of this team in future years where Paddock is about to be a free agent. So that's been a talking point, obviously, all season and even in the offseason going into the season. But I'm a big believer in Festa. I'm a pretty big believer in Zebby Matthews. And just in general, I'm a big believer in trusting young, high upside future guys over impending free agents who just don't look that good. With that said, he's done nothing to lose his job since the bad first outing. Yeah. So it's hard to kind of bump him. Now, should he be on a pretty short leash here if he has a couple of bad starts? Absolutely. But we can talk about that if and when he has bad starts. And so, for that matter, Simeon Woods-Richardson has been pretty up and down. He walked 5 guys yesterday. There's pressure on him too because while he's young and theoretically could be part of the rotation, I think from an upside standpoint, he's not anywhere near the Festa Matthews level. But neither of those guys have been a problem,
right?
For especially like you said, relative to other 4th and 5th starters,
right?
They've been just fine. What you're trying to get out of that. I mean, look, would you be better off if your 4th and 5th starter were actual upside guys? Sure. But that's not guaranteed with Festa and Matthews. And most of these games, like even this Cleveland game or Paddock's last 2 or 3 starts, he's exited having allowed like 2 runs in 5 innings.
Right.
Like, okay, would you be better off 6 or 7? Yeah, but
I think his ERA over the last
it's like 3 something. I think. I mean, it's fine.
Right.
I mean. So, and also I do think it's like not counterproductive, but it's like a little bit misguided to be like, how can we upgrade this pitching staff, which has a 2.88 ERA over the last month and has been by far the only good thing about this team. Now, it can always be better, and saving a run still matters. Right. But I also think in a lot of spots, especially in these last like 3 or 4 Paddock starts, if the Twins just scored 5 runs. Which isn't asking that much. I've been told major league teams do it all the time. He'd be like, "Oh, that was a good, solid start by Paddock."
Yeah, so the natural question that to be asked is, people are going to be asking is like, can they trade away some pitching for some hitting? And I would have argued that would have been a thing to consider during the offseason.
Right.
But you're not going to see that at the end of April or the beginning of May. Those kind of trades are not made at this point.
Yeah. I mean,
first of all, and for like Paddock and Simeon Woods-Richardson, you're not going to get that much. The question, and you're certainly not going to get much that's going to help this year.
Well, you get a lot more for Simeon Woods-Richardson than you would for Paddock.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
But yes. Right. And you're not, to me, it would make no sense to look at what's happening and say we should trade Festa or we should trade Matthews.
Right.
Because, first of all, why are you sacrificing future to help a team that might already be cooked?
Right. Yep.
And I would argue, like, if that's your point of view, if you're trying to turn those guys into help for this team, just put them in the rotation at that point and let them try to have a big impact. So it is a weird spot. I mean, I think
the question would be, would they go up the ladder on that? Would they consider trading away Bailey Ober? Or
but how does that make your team better?
Well, it doesn't necessarily make your team better. Unless you are, that's my point kind of is like, you're not going to get hitting help this year for that. You can get probably hitting help for a future year.
But that's a different discussion. If you're just starting to trade away veterans, which honestly in 2 months we might be at that point.
And that's what I was leading to. So I think let's have these discussions again in July. Because if this team continues to, at what point does the front office take a look at it and say, let's just assume they're not a 500 team by July 1st. Right. They are, but they're, not, they haven't fallen off the map. They've basically been treading water as we are for right now for 2 months. They're 5 games under 500 come the All-Star break. Which isn't far enough to be, we absolutely can't win the AL Central. AL Central might be a winnable division at 5 games under 500 by the All-Star break. You'd have to go on a tear, but you can see it.
I actually think that they're going to be, if that's the case, they'll be double-digit games back in the Central. The wild card, maybe, a third wild card spot could be within reach, which is the same basic thing.
Same thing, right? Yeah, that's right.
Right now, Detroit is...
Yes, that's right. Detroit's doing well.
I'm not the biggest believer necessarily, but and for that matter, Cleveland's winning. Cleveland. What's Cleveland's record now after taking 3 or 4 from the Twins? They got to be 6 or 7 games above 500 at this point. So, if the Twins are still below 500 at what did you say, the All-Star break?
Yeah, the All-Star break or July 1st. Probably, right.
I think the division most likely is going to be away from them, but the presence of the third wild card, we've seen in past years, it only takes like 85 wins to be in the mix.
That's right.
And certainly if you're talking halfway through a season, 500 gets you into that mix. Although I would certainly want them to be kind of realistic with where they're at.
Yep.
It's one thing to say we're only 5 games out of the last playoff spot. It's another thing to say, well, we have 6 teams ahead of us for that because you have to play better than all those teams.
But wildcard spot is only 8 games above 500. Right. 85 wins is only 8 games above 500, right?
Yeah.
But you
got to look at the whole picture.
It also means that if you're 5 games under 500, that means you got to play 13 games over 500 baseball for the last 2.5 months.
Well, right. But the reality is, too, if 5 teams are ahead of you, one of those 5 teams is also going to play really well. That's the thing that the wild card warps the playoff picture. And I'm not saying it's bad or anything, but it warps it because and this was the intention of it. First of all, the intention was to make more money on playoff television.
Exactly.
But the secondary intention was to keep more teams in contention, or at least make them think and make their fans think that they're in contention later in the season. Right. And it's done that because it's very hard to be more than 5 games out of the last wildcard spot, because the last wildcard spot typically goes to a team that's barely has a winning record. Right. But it's different to say we're 5 games out of the last playoff spot versus we're 5 games out of the last playoff spot and we're 6th in line for that playoff spot.
Yeah, for sure.
But here's the other thing that I thought of as you were saying that. Are we sure we want this front office making those trades?
Well, they did a pretty good job back in 2022.
They've made one sell-off trade. It was Nelson Cruz.
Well, Barrios too. And that one.
Did they do well?
Well.
For Barrios, Austin Martin is a non-factor, and we're talking about if Simeon Woods-Richardson should remain in the rotation. I don't think they did horribly or anything.
I think that was fine.
But that's not a mark in their favor.
They've done better selling than they have buying. They've
only sold 2 players ever.
Right. Well,
Nelson Cruz, that was a great trade.
Right. Fantastic.
Okay. One great trade 5 years ago. I'm not even saying so much about their track record. I'm saying, are they going to be here?
Well, maybe.
It's when they finally let go of Terry Ryan in 2016, they fired him
just before
the trade deadline.
Yes, that's right.
Because they didn't want a lame duck front office making those trades.
Except that they still had a lame duck front office making those
Rob
trades.
Anthony. But what I mean is, and I get the logic of that, which is if you've lost faith in the decision makers, why would you let them make the biggest possible decisions, which is like a sell-off of Pablo Lopez and Bailey Ober or Joe Ryan or something like that? Now, the alternative is you fire them mid-season, which I don't think is ever going to happen, because who would you replace them with? The realistic alternative is you go business as usual to the end of the season, and then maybe you bring in another front office to make those trades, except by that point, you've wasted one of their only like 2 or 3 remaining.
Sure. Although we'll get closer to this after 2 more months of baseball.
Sure.
Like we're talking about this after 1 month of baseball. There's 2 more months to come here, and then we can start talking about this on July 1st. The truth is that they don't have that many like high leverage assets that are going to be free agents between the trade deadline and next offseason.
Not that are going to be free agents, but they have a lot of guys who have 1 or 2 additional years of control. And
it's mostly 2+, right? At the trade deadline, it will be 2+, right? After 1+, you've got what? You
have a starting catcher you could trade.
Well, Jeffers, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, you got Willie Castro that you could trade, who's an impending free agent.
Right.
I mean, pretty much everyone after this year will have 2 years of team control left.
Sure.
I mean, that's
my point. Is they'll have 2 years of team control even going into the offseason. So.
Right, but that's where you want to. I mean, that's where they're going to want to trade guys. That's where they want to trade for guys.
Right,
is with multiple years, not just half a year or a year and a half. I mean, that's where they traded for Gray. That's where they traded for Pablo. Who am I missing?
Mally.
Molly was the manager.
Yeah,
that had a year and a half of control. Yeah. I don't think the front office is going to get fired.
No, I don't either.
However, if there's going to be a sell-off, either at midseason or in the offseason, do you want them doing it? I'm asking that truly as a question. I'm not trying to like be cute about it and give my opinion through asking a question. Sure. I'll put it this way: the last thing I would want to have happen is to, let's say at July 30th, to have them trade like Pablo Lopez, let's say, and then 3 months later,
who has 2+ years, right?
Who then 3 months later, some billionaire buys the team and cleans
brings
house,
it to the front office, right?
And then you go. So we just let a huge team-altering decisions be made by an outgoing group. And maybe I'm overstating the potential that this isn't the front office going forward. Right. how are we going to predict what a new owner...
There's certainly a higher potential for it given the fact that there's a potential ownership change.
Right.
I mean, they're amongst the factors that are going to be sort of the overall performance of the team, but also like how close do we really think we are to selling this team?
That's kind of what I'm. Yeah.
Right. I could see where ownership would say, you can trade away some guys at the trade deadline, but nobody with 2+ years.
Right. Don't make the biggest decisions. Which, okay, that's right. I kind of get that. Let's finish on a few other. Speaking of ownership, I'll give a little attendance update. So I wrote about the attendance on April 17th. I think I wrote about it basically. And since then they've like doubled the number of home games they've played. So I can give you the full update here. So they've played 15 home games this season out of 81. So what is that? 1/5 basically.
Yeah, something like
that. Here's where they rank. So it's gotten worse since I wrote about it.
Yes. Right. And that was after a really gorgeous weekend where they had at least one pretty well attended game.
So right now, the Twins through 15 home games are at 17,030 people per game, which ranks 26th out of 30 major league teams. It should be noted, by the way, that attendance across baseball is up this season by about, 800 per game per team, something like that. If you take the Twins out of it, it's up even further than that, obviously. The only teams that are drawing fewer or are selling fewer tickets.
All right, hold on.
Their announced attendance is tickets sold, not actual people in the seats.
So it's got to be White Sox, A's, Marlins.
It's another real obvious one that you'll...
Angels?
No. They're playing in a minor league. There's 2 teams.
Rays. Yeah. Right, yeah, obviously. Right.
So they're 26 out of 30, and the teams who have sold fewer tickets per game are White Sox, who are the worst team of all time. The Marlins, who have been a laughingstock for a long time and have really no fan base hardly. And then the two teams that are playing in not their ballparks, minor league facilities.
Capped attendance.
Right. Right. Yeah, one has an 11,000 capacity and the other has like a 14,000 capacity.
Right.
So, yeah, of course they're not drawing more than 17,000. Not that they would anyway. But so if you just look at teams that are actually playing in their actual ballpark, there are only 28 of them.
Right.
The Twins are 26th out of 28. The only teams in their real ballparks drawing or selling fewer tickets are the White Sox and the Marlins.
Yeah.
Now, if that is not a message,
Angels drawing better. Rockies,
the Rockies always draw better.
Yeah, they always draw better, but boy, they're a terrible team this year.
If that's a message,
and have been for a while,
that the team officials and ownership cannot understand, they will never understand it. And that's my belief from talking to them plenty, believe me, is it's like trying to talk to a wall. And I'm sure they would say the same thing about me, but it's like speaking different languages where I'm like, I mean, they thought the attendance would be rising. It ain't going to be rising. And until the name at the top changes, it's not going to rise unless you go on some great winning. Winning cures all.
Yeah, that's right.
But I don't see this team really going on a great winning either. So year over year, which is another thing that the Twins didn't really seem – those that I've talked to kept bringing up weather and kept bringing up marketing philosophies.
Well, yeah, the other thing that they will bring up is that a lot of people are trading. They have more flexibility with their tickets now than they used to have, and they think that there are a lot of the tickets that they sold for earlier in the year are going to end up being used later in the year.
Uh-huh. Yeah, good luck with that.
Okay.
Now, if you had a team that people wanted to see, they'd use them early, they'd use them middle, they'd use them late.
We'll see if they're a better team, maybe.
Yeah. So compared to the first 15 games last season, so it's apples to apples, same April weather that it always is, and I think actually this year's been slightly nicer than last year.
It was a cold spring.
You can pick nits comparing the opponents and all that, but I mean they've played the Mets, they've played the Astros, they've played the I mean they've played some. Yeah, they haven't played the Yankees, but they hadn't played the Yankees at this point last year either. So year over year, first 15 games this year, first 15 home games last year, they're down 43,000 tickets total, which is 2,850 per game, which is 14.3% year over year decline. Yeah. And it wasn't good last year, by the way. I mean, last year was the second lowest attendance, I think, in the history of Target Field in a non-COVID related season. I'm of the opinion it will get worse. I mean, the raw number of tickets sold will rise because more people go to games in the summer, but that was also the case last year. So if you're continuing to compare year over year, which I think is the only fair comparison, I don't expect them to close the gap on that last 15%, 15% difference. And if you just sort of extrapolate, even if it's 10%, well, they were at like 1.9 last year. Yeah. That gets you to like 1.7 or 1.75 or something like that. So for years we've heard from frustrated fans, and especially over the last 2 years, I would say, where it's like, you have to show your frustration with your wallet or with your butts not being in the seats. And I don't know that can have a strong enough effect monetarily to matter, because as we've talked about over the years, like in the last 20 years, let's say, the kind of percentage of revenue teams draw from attendance has shrunk compared to national television, MLB AM, that sort of thing. But when you're the Twins and you're not really making any money from local television, and by the way, imagine what their signups are right now. Right. I would bet, we haven't talked about this, you just tell me yes or no. Do we have more Patreon subscribers than they have Twins TV subscribers? I bet it's close.
The streaming, you mean?
Yeah. I bet it's close.
By Patreon subscribers, I will say no, but it's a fair question.
Yeah.
Do they have 4,000? I hope so.
They'll never tell you. I mean, I've asked. They won't tell you. But but we've always heard.
But we get 10,000 downloads on the free one. I bet you I wonder if they get. I'm almost sure they're not going to be getting that.
I may or may not, in a moment of frustration, said to someone, "We have more people listening to our show than you have going to your games." And then that got a real bad reaction, and I scaled back that. But it's either true or almost true. But my point on the attendance is, when fans get frustrated, there's a sense, I think, of like helplessness. Like, how can we make this frustration known? Especially when teams are getting 100 and something million before a pitch is thrown from deals. I mean, and the only way you can really do that, I mean, sending mean messages to the Twins Twitter account ain't doing it.
Right.
Because I know the people who are running that. They ain't the poll ads, okay? These are just people making a living, trying their best.
Very kind people.
Yes, super nice group of people. The only way you can really show it is by not buying tickets. And whether or not that makes a dent and that changes, that gets all the way up the ladder and somebody goes, can you believe this? We have to change what we do because I'm not that naive with billionaires.
Sure.
But this is what's happening. I mean, it's down 15% year over year.
Yeah.
Like what? I mean, some of these games, there's no one at. I mean, like this is old school mid 90s Metrodome when I used to go during the afternoon with my buddies. Like, and if this message is not being received, you'll never have a message received. I mean, you're dropping down. You're only selling more tickets than the Marlins and the White Sox.
Right. Yes.
That's your message.
Yeah.
What you choose to take out of that, I don't know. So that's the attendance. We'll maybe update it in a month or so and see once the weather starts warming up a little bit. Although this week? It's Orioles, and who are they playing this week?
I don't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah.
No big huge draw or anything, but. Okay, last couple things, and then we'll shut up. Wow, we could have included this.
Giants.
Yeah, it's a decent draw.
Yeah.
Dan will be excited.
Dan will be excited.
Dan is a hidden Giants fan.
California. He's from California.
Is he?
Yeah.
He doesn't mention that.
Yeah.
We used to make fun of Do Hyung Park for constantly dropping in
Stanford.
that he was from Stanford,
Yeah.
like within 10 seconds of meeting people. And Matthew Leach is from Harvard. I will give Matthew Leach credit. I've only heard him say he's from Harvard like 10 times, which for a Harvard alum is like bare minimum. Dan Hayes tells people he's from California. It's almost like in the movie Speed, where if the bus went below 50 miles an hour, everyone died.
That's right,
if he doesn't say he's from
The
California,
word California doesn't come out of his mouth
something bad
10 minutes.
happens.
Yeah, right.
And I will say in his defense, they claim these dudes off waivers or they sign guys, and they're all from like Lorba Linda, Santa Rosa. It's just inevitably some random guy from California. At which point Dan goes up and he's like, Warriors, Lakers, what's your team?
Or like they start talking California.
Did you play high school at the whatever field? And it's like, oh, I just wanted. Anyway, Walker Jenkins.
Meanwhile, you go up to Varland.
Yeah.
go up to Varland and say, well, what's with the meatballs? Why you throw the fat pitches over the middle of the plate?
Yeah. Yeah, there are 2 Minnesotans, although it's down from 3 last year.
That's right.
Only 2.
I saw Thielbar get into a game with the Cubs the other day. A random Cubs game I was watching and went, oh, I miss Caleb.
It is very funny that they signed Coulomb, who's done a really nice job.
Yes.
To replace Thielbar, basically. It's like your number one lefty, but like not, high leverage, like medium leverage. If you watch them like side by side, identical deliveries. Like they both have such an over the top, and I don't remember Coulomb being quite as over the top. I could look that up, but they're both like slow curveball. They really thought, let's replace Thielbar. Like let's literally replace him with somebody. And so far, actually, all 3 we just talked about. France has been solid, and Bader's been very good.
Yeah.
Coulomb has done the job.
You're right.
The problem isn't that they identified good cheap guys; it's that they didn't get any actual
That's right.
more impact.
They
guys.
bet on the wrong.
Right.
Or either they're not developing hitters the way they want to develop hitters, or they're struggling with that last step. Or
speaking of developing hitters, Walker Jenkins, who hurt his ankle like in the middle of spring training, missed time, played 2 games at AA, got shut back down. Both times they were like, it's a minor injury. Now it's 2 months almost since the initial injury,
right?
And he's been shut down again. Got a cortisone injection, and the Twins said a couple days ago he's basically being shut down probably through the end of May, or at least late May.
Yeah. 2 more last months. Huh.
They're not the best at this point when it comes to like timelines and injury information, but they're really pretty bad at it when it's A, minor league guys, and B, minor league guys who aren't on the 40-man roster, because those guys aren't really under the purview of the major league coaching or training staff.
Right.
we still haven't heard what the actual injury is, right? And if it was a sprained ankle and he's out 2 months, that's strange. Yeah. It's unfortunate. It's not going to matter for this season in terms of like impacting the Twins. The odds of Walker Jenkins advancing to the major leagues were pretty minimal. It would have been maybe September or something like
non-zero,
that. But he missed time last year too. He got hurt on opening day last year.
Right.
He's played 100
That was
games.
A hamstring thing, though, not an ankle.
Yeah, but he
thing, right?
missed
That's
a lot of time.
Well, of course, we've seen what hamstrings do.
He's played like 100 games in 3 years. It's just, I give the same speech like every month. And we gave it with Keisha. We gave it. It's just remarkable that every injury hits every prospect. And not only do they miss the maximum amount of time, right. but then it reoccurs. We talked about Emmanuel Rodriguez has had thumb problems now for 2 years. It's frustrating just in the sense that, like, when the major league team's playing poorly, you look to the minor league side and you look for hope. And Walker Jenkins is as good a prospect as they've had since Byron Buxton, I would argue. And just much like Byron Buxton, I guess, can't stay on the damn field. We
talked about on the Patreon, the top 3 prospects in the Twins organization right now have been already fighting injury concerns.
Yeah. Matt Cantorino, who's another prospect who's gone through an incredible number of injuries, out for the season after arm surgery during spring training. They dropped him from the 40-man roster, released him because you can't outright a player who's injured. So they released him and then re-signed him to a 2-year minor league deal, which is the same thing they did with Brock Stewart and Giovanni Moran. It basically is first year is rehab, second year they're hoping you come back. It's a way to keep him in the organization. So I like that. Let's see, a couple other small things. Byron Buxton, 100th career steal.
Yes.
And I tweeted this out. He now has the highest stolen base percentage in the history of Major League Baseball with a minimum 100 steals. 89.3%. He has 100 steals and he's been caught 12 times, which is absolutely amazing. And, the next best guys are like Chase Utley, Carlos Beltran, Kyle Tucker, who's playing currently, Andres Jimenez, I think, and then you get to some older school. It's all recent guys, which is interesting because fans would be right to think that this era of baseball is very much not a stolen base era of baseball.
Of course.
But that's confusing volume with efficiency. And the reason it's not a high stolen base era of baseball is because teams figured out that stealing bases at a low percentage hurts you, doesn't help you. And so the reason that the best stolen base percentages in baseball history are largely either active players or guys who played within the last 10 years or so is because this is an era where the only guys who run a lot are extremely efficient. There's no more. Go look at like Gary Gaetti or Greg Gagney's yearly stolen base totals, or even like Torrey Hunter for a lot of his career for that matter. They'd steal like 12 bases and get caught like 10 times. Well, that's been eradicated from the game basically. So yeah, good. Anytime I post that stat, people are like, well, that just shows Buxton should be running more. And it's like, have you ever watched Byron Buxton? Like,
I was.
Yes, he should be running more if he were healthy, but he's not healthy, and part of the reason he's not healthy is because when he runs, he gets injured.
I was frustrated yesterday watching him when he does not seem to like to go early in a count to steal a base. He doesn't often go first pitch, second pitch in there, and by the time he was gotten to the point where it was a 2-2 count on who was batting behind him. Anyway, knocked into a double play,
Larnach.
That was one of the things. Yeah, was that Larnach? Yeah, that's right.
Here's the thing about Buxton. He's 7 for 7 this year, which is a lot. He's not on first base that much.
Well,
that gets lost in it, too. He's running at a very high percentage of opportunities. If you assume first base is the opportunity, he's never stolen third base in his entire career. So I get it.
Oh, no, it was spring training. Sorry. Yeah.
He's never done it. That's part of it. Like, the reason Ricky Henderson, part of the reason, among many, that Ricky Henderson was such an amazing base stealer, no one was on first base more than Ricky Henderson.
He walked all the time.
He walked and hit singles.
Right.
Byron Buxton doesn't walk and doesn't really hit that many singles either. Right. He hits homers and doubles and he has like 3 walks all year. And so there's stats that you can look at that are like, stolen base opportunities versus times attempting a steal. And you'll be shocked to see, like, over the course of a full season, certainly, the number of opportunities between like a guy who has a high walk rate, high singles rate, like a Luis Ariz, who's I'm not saying he steals bases, but he has a million stolen base opportunities because he's just always on first base. Joe Mauer, who didn't steal bases, but had a million stolen base opportunities because he just lived on first base. Byron Buxton doesn't really get on first base that much, for better and worse. I mean, the negative is he doesn't walk that much and doesn't have a high on base percentage. The positive is most of his hits are doubles,
extra bases,
homers. So that's a factor. On the we've also seen, speaking of stolen bases, and you said like frustration, why didn't he go there? We've seen twice during this Cleveland series, late in close games, they sent Kersey and they sent Bader, and they both got thrown out.
Yeah, Bader's been picked a couple times.
Everybody loves the idea of running more until the caught stealings start piling up. And then it's like, oh, they just killed the rally. They just, whatever. Bader hasn't, Bader's done a lot of good things. But the one thing we thought he would do was be a factor on the bases, and he hasn't really done that. I mean, he's 1 for 3, but he also got picked off once. So he's really like 1 for 4. I mean, for that matter, I think Kersey's 3 for 5.
Yeah.
He's put in some difficult spots because he gets brought in cold off the bench, but then beyond that, everyone in the ballpark knows he's there to run.
It's just a matter of time,
so
right?
It's like,
that's right.
Okay. The other
He's not going to surprise anybody. He's there to steal the base.
It's not really like in the flow of the game. It's like, here's this guy he's going to try to steal. They also have a major league high 20 hit by pitches, which is something I predicted coming into the season. Once they had Ty France to a group that got hit a ton last year.
Probably going down a little bit now because Wallner's out of the lineup.
That's true.
And Castro is out of the lineup.
Yeah, true.
They're going to come back to the pack.
No, first of all, imagine how bad their on-base percentage would be if they hadn't gotten hit by 20 pitches. But also, then, we've seen, especially with this team, just about every hit by pitch leads to a trip from the trainer.
Yes.
And sadly, in Keishel's case, leads to 2 months off. It's a hard way to make an easy living, boosting your on-base percentage by getting hit by pitches.
That's it.
Let's see, one other thing. We could probably end on that.
I wondered if Kwan was trying to be hit by a pitch with the bases loaded yesterday in the bottom of the ninth. He seemed like he was crowding the plate, but they did pitch inside him a couple times. He turned away from it. So
I am legitimately shocked he didn't get on base there.
Yeah,
just
I was too. I was too.
Once they got to that spot with one of the peskiest, grinding at bats hitters, and just good hitters, obviously. Kwan, I mean, he really.
Well, and just so that third strike that he took, which got them out of there. I mean, I think it was a strike, but boy, it was a. I don't blame him for not swinging at it.
It's funny because like Jeffers after Game 3 was taught. I think Dan quoted him. He was saying like we just got screwed by the ump basically, and there were a lot of questionable calls. But the Twins benefited from some iffy calls during this series too. And I'm not saying it evened out. I know the one game I looked at the ump scorecard and it was like very lopsided in Cleveland's favor. But that's one of the great confirmation bias.
Sure, of course.
Examples of all time.
It is why I'm looking forward to ABS though. I'm tired. I'm tired of talking about this.
I'm on record. Umps are narcs. So are refs. I don't know any. I used to say this when I was playing in the JCC. People might remember. There was 2 brothers, Tony Levine and I can't remember his name, but the one coached football at Houston. One played for the Gophers and then they were refs when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
They were like teenagers or early college
sure.
age, and so they would referee. And it's the only time I ever got a technical. Tony Levine was reffing. I think he coached the Houston Cougars, I'm pretty sure, for a couple years. But I slammed the ball down and then didn't catch it. Like I meant to slam it down and catch it, but it went between my hands and like shot up straight into the air. And he just looked at me. He goes, "I got to give you a technical for that." It's the only time I've ever gotten a technical. But I remember getting into a conversation with either him and his twin brother, who were both refs, and being like, even as a 13-year-old, I'm like, "You guys are just like narcs. Like, who wants to be a ref?" Honestly. Now, I will say, Major League umpires, for whom I feel the same, they make like $500,000 a year. Like they have incredible jobs, and they have endless job security. Well, like they cannot be fired no matter how bad they are. And they work 7 months a year or something like that. It's a hell of a gig
if you can get it.
Yeah, it's a hell of a gig if you can get it, and if you don't mind just being berated by drunk people, which I don't. I let John do that.
The problem is that how many of those jobs open per year? And you've got what? So you've got 30 groups at AAA waiting to do it as well.
And I know
15, 20 groups.
There's a weird. It's almost like I talked before. There's like this weird subset of people who are like take it upon themselves to like stick up for billionaires.
Right.
There's also a similarly odd, in my mind, group of people who stick up for umpires. Where like they're just whether they were umpires or their dad was an umpire or whatever it is, where they're like, you know, it's a really hard job and like the pitches are going faster than ever and blah blah. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, and more movement than ever. The spin rate's crazy.
Definitely.
Right.
And I will be the first to say that I actually do think that a higher percentage of calls are correct now than ever.
Oh, I think so too.
Because they're being forced and graded in a way that if you don't, you are shown to be bad.
Right. That's right.
But to me, that's just more evidence that we need ABS and we need robot umpires. Because I do think we've reached like the
limits of what human body can perceive,
and,
right?
And
I'm with you.
It's not so much that I'm joking that they're being narcs and all that, mostly joking. But I even think this way in the NBA as we watch a million bad calls in the Lakers-Wolves series, both ways.
Right, yes.
Like there's just so many calls where you're just like, what was that?
Right.
And we're challenging, but then you lose your challenge and you just can't correct a bad call. And it's like, what logic is that? I just wonder, like, the size and the speed of the NBA and the speed and movement of pitches in Major League Baseball. Have we reached the point? Your wife's outside mooning us with her friend, basically. That'll wake you up in the morning. Have we reached the point where, like, the human brain and eye, is this as good as refereeing and umpiring can get? In which case, maybe they shouldn't be criticized, but that's more evidence
either way.
We're done with them. Yeah. Like, we've reached the point where, like, they're not getting any better.
Say, after watching it in spring training, I'm dying to have it here. And I think a lot of the players are. I think the manager, and I wouldn't be shocked if the umpires are mostly on board with it as well. I don't think they want to have to be putting up with this kind of thing that's going on.
It depends for them, and then we'll shut up. But because, like, in the near term, they're not going to lose jobs to it.
Right. Yes.
But it's a little bit like the AI discussion.
Sure.
Where it's like in the near term, we still need people to train AI, and we still need people to. But like 10 years from now, do we think that there are going to be human umpires?
Yeah.
That's what their union's basically trying to figure out is like, do we want to be welcoming to this? Sure. Because for a few years, we're still going to be needed.
If I'm a 55-year-old umpire, I'm probably all for it. Yeah, right. Make my job easier for the next 10 years.
That's true. Yeah, right. Who cares? Yeah, I do. In times of frustration in life, with the state of the world or the state of the economy or whatever it is, or I look at my 401k and see that it's down, whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes I say to myself, how long do you plan on living anyway? You know what I mean? Like, you might only need like another 15 years worth of money anyway, right? Like, so yeah, if you're
shockingly, I'm familiar with that mindset.
Yeah.
Hard to believe,
yeah. So if you're like, 58-year-old umpire, they got amazing pensions, they got amazing retirement, they got amazing all the benefits, and you're saying like, okay, if ABS comes in, even if there's only 3 years of that before they transition to a full
seniority for a while longer.
I'll be 62 by that point. I'll be done. I'll take a voluntary, buyout, whatever. Yeah. So maybe they're like, honestly, maybe umpires are like, they have such a good union that they want the buyout. So they're like, bring in the robots. I'll take the buyout.
That's true.
I know a couple people who recently got laid off from newspapers who were just essentially waiting for the buyout because the buyout is better than if you choose to leave.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. We always finish on a very odd discussion.
Let's thank our sponsors and then talk about what's coming up. First of all, thanks to Raycon and Game Time and BetterHelp. They have all kept this podcast free. But a special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Black Stack Brewing. It's now being distributed to all of Greater Minnesota, so stop by your favorite liquor store or the Black Stack Tap Room and grab your favorite brew or try something new.
Patreon subscribers, if you haven't, go listen to our 2 Wolves-Lakers podcasts. We're going to kind of play it by ear in terms of future basketball bonus episodes.
And just other bonus episodes. Like lots of crazy things we've got on.
Yeah. We're going to do a hockey one, but it's not true. I went on Barrero yesterday, and he was like, what do you think about the Wild? I'm like, I don't really. Sorry. I tried to make up because we were on the air. But we'll be back Monday to recap the Fenway Park Red Sox series.
Yep, that's right.
And hopefully at that point maybe have a pretty good idea what the Royce Lewis timeline is.
Right.
good or bad,
Yep.
on that.
Look forward to Homestand.
So if you want to hear that episode, it's Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman, $8 a month. And last month you would have gotten either 11 or 12 total episodes, totaling, by the way, like 20 something hours of content for $8.
Yeah, and by the way, that's the only content we're going to be providing next week. The
Yes.
2 Patreon episodes.
John will be out of town
I'm going to be
next.
out of town in Philadelphia for the next 2 weeks. So we will be back with the free podcast on May 16th. Next week we'll be having a Patreon episode to recap the Red Sox series on Monday. My guess is we're doing a mailbag on Wednesday.
Yep.
We'll have 2 more the following week before we come back with the free show on the 16th.
So, yeah.
Plus various other stuff we decide to slam in there, like maybe some Wolves talk,
Yeah,
etc.
when the Wolves sweep their second round opponent, we'll do something about that.
And to give you a taste of that, here is a clip of the latest discussion that we had after Game 5, after the Wolves knocked the Lakers out of the playoffs. Hope you enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, if you flip that, their strategy from the Lakers' defensive standpoint was clearly just get the ball out of Edwards' hands.
Right.
And, I mean, they were coming – I mean, they were guarding him like people guard Steph Curry, where they just pick him up half court with 2 guys. And
Exactly. Yep.
they have made some interesting adjustments with that because, like, there were times in the past, in the playoffs or even this season, where – and I think Edwards even said, like, I hate this. Like, it sucks. Like, they're basically forcing me to give the ball up.
Right.
And I think there were times this season where – and in past seasons even, where they come with, like, the immediate double or sometimes, like, the fake double where they kind of show double, then they go back, and then they show double again, and that can drive you nuts. You know, in the past, there's been times where he's tried to beat it individually, where he's just said, I'll just dribble my way out of this, basically, and try to shoot a 3 over him. And that doesn't work that great. We didn't see that much last night. And then there's been times this season and last year in the playoffs where he tries to give the ball up immediately. Like, they come with the double, and he just sheds the ball, and you know they play 4-on-3.
But then what happens is when you do it too quickly, now you're back to 4-on-4.
They can adjust their defense, right? So I thought as this series went on, particularly the last couple games, and I probably give credit to Finch on this too. They found a real nice, I thought, kind of mid zone there where it was like, okay, we know these doubles and these sort of quasi doubles are coming immediately, so let's try to plan around it where. He held the ball, but not really to attack. It was almost like repositioning so that the defense would have to adjust, and then someone like DiVincenzo could come off the screen.
Sure.
Or honestly, what ended up happening a lot, and it worked well for them, is he would draw 2 guys outside the 3-point line, and then like Gobert or Randall or McDaniels would essentially just go to the free throw line extended in the middle of it, which is kind of how you beat a zone. It wasn't necessarily always a zone. And he would just kind of dump it off to them.
Right.
And this is what the Warriors do with Draymond. And when Steph Curry gets doubled like that, and he does constantly, Draymond basically just goes to the middle, receives the ball, and then just quarterbacks 4-on-3 offense from there, where he can just attack right down the middle, or you can feed to the outside. And so I thought Edwards and Finch found a nice kind of middle ground on that really worked, kind of attacking, using him to draw the defender, getting it to the middle of the court basically, and then attacking 4-on-3 with a man advantage from there, which I thought worked. And then for that matter, like we were saying earlier, they were playing Randall straight up, not because I think they like disrespected Randall, but their whole defensive game plan was to just auto double Edwards.
Right.
Well, if that's going to be your plan for 48 minutes, every game, well, you have to play other guys straight up basically.
Right.
And so then once Edwards wasn't shooting well, they would basically just run offense through Randall, who, like we said, was not only getting every matchup he wanted, and he could even pick a better one sometimes on pick and roll, get a switch to like Vincent or whatever.
Exactly right.
But he also knew there was no double coming, and I was amazed by that. Like, there were times where he was backing down like Austin Reeves,
and
like
I mean
15 feet away, and they just let him play straight up. And I'm like,
part of that though, we'll finally kind of get to the A topic here, which is Rudy Gobert. Part of the reason they weren't bringing a double from the middle is because Rudy Gobert is playing 40 minutes last night and is sitting there waiting for the ball underneath the hoop. Like the the poor guy who's trying to cover Rudy Gobert, who's probably not capable of covering Rudy Gobert to begin with, now has to also deal with Randall backing down his guy in there and coming over for a double
Right.
on top of it. Like,
But yeah, I mean,
that's a no-win situation.
if that's how you, and believe me, I understand wanting to double Ant like that and try, force everyone else to beat you and all that stuff.
Sure.
Because if you don't, I mean, that's part of why he didn't get to the lane as much as I would have liked to see, but I still thought he had some opportunities to do that. But you're taking that away. I get it. I mean, that's a common coaching decision in playoff against a great guard, basically. But whatever you think of Julius Randle, and everyone's stock in Julius Randle should have risen considerably over this 5-game series for sure. But whatever you did think and do think of Julius Randle, if you can get him backing down some 6'4" non-good defensive guard,
Right.
I mean, he's going to destroy that. I mean, he's been doing that his entire life, I bet. And so that I thought was a clear advantage that they took, that they pushed the envelope on at the right times. I mean, Randall was great. I mean, look, Edwards had monster first 3 or 4 games, obviously. But if you're just looking for who was the most consistently very good or great for the whole series, it was probably Randall. And I mean, I thought his shot making, not only on mid range and spinning around the hoop, but 3-pointers was pretty damn good.
Yeah.
He made his free throws.
He had a monster 3-point game in game 4, right?
Yeah, he got to the line a ton and made like 80-something% of his free throws, including a bunch of clutch ones in the fourth quarter yesterday. I thought his defense on Luka when needed was pretty good. I thought his defense on LeBron was pretty good.
Awesome, right?
And I thought just the ability for them to go, okay, now the offense runs through him, because that's been a huge problem for them, is where it just stagnates because they don't have like a traditional kind of shot creating point guard, because Mike Conley's 1,000 years old. Although I'm a huge, Becky will tell you that one of the things I say constantly.
You're going to break my heart about this. Keep going.
Is thank God for Mike Conley.
So I will tell you, I've got season tickets to the Wolves, right? I don't have any Wolves gear whatsoever except like baseball hats. I don't have a jersey. I don't have anything. So I go to these games. I'm like, I don't. What am I going to wear? I need a jersey or something like that. So I've been thinking about what jersey I want to get, and I'm kind of going through the roster. Like, yeah, obviously, Anthony Edwards is awesome, but I'm just like, is there a player that I probably like more than a lot of other people like? And I settled on it in game 4. And it was Mike Conley.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish what you're
saying. And it was he hasn't had the great. He wasn't having the greatest game in game 4, and he didn't have the greatest game in game 5. But he shows up when he needs to show up, and proof in the pudding was. I mean, he made a couple of big baskets in like the second quarter last night, or last game, or a couple of big plays in like the second quarter. Then he was again mostly absent. But he played pretty well defensively in what he is almost always undersized, no matter where he's lining up on there. And then he was the one who stopped the 0 for 18 streak and made the big 3 there at the end. And if you watch that play, you could see him coaching. I think it was Jaden was probably out of there. I think it was Alexander Smith.
Alexander Walker.
Sorry, Alexander Walker. Coaching him like, I'm going to be here in the corner. Don't get too close to me. You see coming over there, floating down in the corner. He's like, no. We need the spacing. You got to stay over there. And sure enough, they find him with the spacing, and he drains the 3. And that was basically the dagger.
Yeah, I mean, he had the block on LeBron in game 4, which was absurd.
That was amazing, yeah.
I mean, yeah, to your point, I mean, he's been undersized his whole career, basically. But particularly in this series, because the Lakers are such a weird team in terms of like size and skill set. Because I mean, we just talked a lot about they played no bigs. Like they didn't even really play a traditional power forward, maybe Vando at times, and let alone a center. But also they don't really have any little guys either, other than Gabe Vincent, who plays like 12 minutes. Like they're just all 6'7", and that's something Rando and Gobert can take advantage of. But it's also makes it very tough to find places to hide or even non-horrible matchups for Conley. But I mean, his smarts and toughness and stuff. I mean, he's just one of my favorite Wolves of all time. That trade to not only, first of all, I hated D'Angelo Russell, and so that was addition by subtraction in my opinion. I think that's been borne out basically everywhere he's ever gone. However, beyond that, to get Mike Conley and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and I think 1 or 2 second-round picks in that trade is one of the great, like, under the radar heists in the history of the Wolves. And, Connolly clearly is on the downside of his career, and his role is being, gradually phased out, obviously. But I mean, just having some level of traditional point guard who has made a career out of being, a stabilizer, a distributor, a undersized but tough defender, and also just a good shooter. And I want him. He's one of the few guys, even last night, I'm saying keep shooting, because he doesn't take bad shots, and he's like a 38-40% shooter pretty consistently. So I thought he was, it wasn't a great game or a great series for him, but he came up with a lot of big moments. The other thing, though, I mean, we talked about LeBron and Luka are going to get all the, attention, blame, criticism, whatever. That's how it goes from the Lakers side. I thought Reeves was terrible.
Oh, I thought so too.
And he's a really good player. He's a very good offensive player, but I thought he just didn't make enough threes, and he got a lot of good looks, and he does nothing in terms of defense whatsoever. And so you talk about Luka being a matchup that you can exploit. They have a lot of matchups that you can exploit, and Reeves is every bit as bad, in my opinion, a defender as Luka, because at least Luka offers some level of size and strength and rebounding, whereas Reeves is every bit as cookable. Like, you want to get switched on to Reeves, but he doesn't do anything else really, and he's not a great distributor or anything. He's just a guy who needs to make shots, and he just didn't make that many shots. Whereas on the flip side, I thought Rui Hachimura was great. Like, he was probably, in terms of like what
he wasn't very good the first two games, but he was awfully good the last few games.
I mean, he made like, I think 40-something% of his threes on pretty high volume. Yeah. It's weird for him too, because he's basically their biggest guy. Like, he's playing power forward center. That is not his, MO. He's not even like a good rebounder really for like a small forward. He's like a true wing. And he was forced to put him in tough spots. But I thought, I mean, he killed them on threes. He hit a lot of threes that like kept the Wolves from pulling away from like 6 points to 12 points. Like, he would kind of stop the bleeding for LA, whereas I didn't think Reeves did much. Finney-Smith didn't do much. And then, their actual bench was terrible. I mean, if you're Jackson Hayes and you spent most of the season starting for them out of default, and you began this series starting for them by default, and he's not good, but he's at least 7 foot and a lob threat. But and he got phased out like right away, and then they just didn't play him. And you're watching Rudy Gobert just go beast mode.
Well, this is what I thought this during the game. I'm like, listen, I get that Jackson Hayes has basically played himself out of almost any minutes this thing, but you were watching Rudy Gobert go 20-20 and maybe 30, or close to 30-20. Like, he's just dominating this game. He is not only is he the reason the Wolves won the game, he's the reason the Wolves weren't blown out in this game, right? They would have been down. They would have been blown out by. This would never have been a game without Rudy Gobert and his performance in there. And you don't have any answer for him whatsoever. You're just like, and you're still putting Jackson, like, you still don't want any guy in there battling with him at all. You've contained him. Like, Hayes hasn't done anything, but you've contained Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert looked terrible. We talked about the last time around, like, how bad Rudy Gobert had looked for 4 games.
Yeah, but that wasn't even
what was supposed to be, right?
That
and
was
I'm not saying that was Jackson Hayes necessarily, but you got to try something. And the obvious thing to try is, how about we put our big guy in there and just see what he can do? See if he can slow this truck down a little bit.
First of all, Rudy was bad for most of the series, but it wasn't even against Jackson Hayes. No, Jackson Hayes played 4 minutes. He played. Yes. By the way, Jackson Hayes played 31 minutes in the entire series. All in the first 4 games, obviously. Right. So that's, what is that? 8 minutes a game for 4 games. Per 100 possessions, which is kind of how you look at things in basketball. While he was on the court, they were outscored by 30 points per 100 possessions with Jackson Hayes on the court. So I agree with all that. Like, if I were in JJ Redick's spot, there would have been someone trying to at least play power forward or center traditionally. But with that said, I think they were going to get destroyed either way. It might have been a different type of getting destroyed. Right. But I mean, there's a reason Jackson Hayes hasn't done anything in the NBA despite being a top 10 pick with all the size and athletic. He's just not good. He has the worst instincts ever. He's a foul machine. He can't do anything offensively other than catch lobs.
So what changed? What changed then for Rudy Gobert, other than the fact that we spent the last episode reverse jinxing him as best we could?
Well, it's funny. First of all, I will stand by every single thing we said about Rudy Gobert on the last episode. Yeah. Because the other thing we said, and the kind of the point of our discussion on the last episode, I thought, was everyone looks at his size, and this has been the case his whole career, and certainly with the Wolves the last 3 years, and they go, oh, you got to take advantage of his size. You got to punish other teams for being smaller. And it used to be, you got to feed him in the post. You got to have him back guys down. And what we talked about on the last episode is that is the opposite of what you need to do to take advantage of Rudy Gobert's size, because no amount of size makes up for, bad hands and can't dribble and all that. I mean, we don't have to go over it. It's what he did last night wasn't even changing that. Like it was, but what he did last night that was huge was actually playing towards his strengths and actually trying to take advantage of the mismatches of their size, not by trying to become something he isn't, which is, a back to the basket post up scorer, which that's just those are just empty possessions when you give it to him like that. They've learned that over the years. They don't even try it really anymore. But what we talked about was the way he can have the biggest impact on this game is what he did, I would say, like the last 6 weeks of the regular season, which is just offensive rebound like a motherfucker.
Right. Well, he did that for sure.
You put him on the court with a bunch of dudes who are 6'8", including some of them who don't want any of that smoke physically. Luka doesn't want to be banging down low with him. LeBron occasionally will, but he doesn't want it. Hachimura is not built for that. I mean, you put Rudy on the court, and he probably thought, oh, this is like when I was growing up, where I was I was probably 6'6" when everyone else was 5'10".
Right.
And he just goes beast mode on it. And he just is he's stronger and he's bigger and he's physical. And, like you said, what was why was he able to do that in Game 5 when he wasn't able to do that before? And I think that's an interesting question. I think we saw down the stretch, it really is a lot about kind of mindset and determination and being like convicted in this is the approach I'm going to take, because it's not necessarily what he wants to do. First of all, it takes a lot of effort to play like that. It takes a lot of, you're getting hit in the face, you're getting elbowed, you're getting thrown to the ground and all that. It's not a fun thing to do that dirty work, but that's why it's so valuable when you find guys like Gobert or Steven Adams, who we might see in the next round with Houston, who do that. But I think it's the same thing that made me wonder down the stretch, why is he now able to do this when he wasn't that effective doing this in the first half of the season? And I don't know. It might just be one of those things where you can't just flip the switch. It has to be like, specific kind of grind mindset, and certainly a Game 5 elimination when they chose to then start all the short guys. Maybe it clicked for him like, oh, they're not even going to play a big. Like, this is just going to be open season for me on the offensive glass.
My perception was that, I agree with you. What I saw in Game 4 versus Game 5 was, where Game 4, probably his worst game.